Portugal, a gem on the Atlantic that offers a marvelous quality of life, breathtaking nature, and a balanced cost of living. Although all of that is true, there are also several obstacles that you may face when moving to the country, and some of them I wish I knew it beforehand. In this video, we'll explore which are they, and most importantly, how you can avoid them. Hey there, this is Mariano and welcome to my channel. Moving abroad involves different obstacles. Some of them you can foresee ahead of time before moving, but some others you don't actually experience until living in the country. These are the ones I had in Portugal. Firstly, the taxes. Taxes can be a pain in any country, but in Portugal, there's some things that you need to understand to work it out. The first thing I encountered was actually finding an accountant to see how I can handle all the things that I didn't understand yet. When I arrived to the country, I started looking at some different accounting firms, and what actually happened is that I ended up overpaying for accounting services that the locals would get at a much cheaper price. Just to give you an example, some of the day-to-day things were charged to me around 150 euros or 200, when locals will simply pay a flat rate of like 35 to 40 euros a month to get the whole services, no matter what exactly that involved. So that is one of the first things I would advise to you, is to find a local accountant. And that could be as easy as just walking around your neighborhood and looking for different places that you will see like tax advisory, consulting services. That was my experience. Right around the corner, I actually had an accountant firm that worked with locals, and that ended up being the best option. One thing that is important to point out is that accountant may not be needed if you're coming to Portugal and be working on an employed basis. However, if you are working on your own or you have your own business, an accountant is certainly a need. And you will also find that, for example, if you're working on your own, Portugal has two systems. It has the simplified regime or the organized accounting, which will have different implicances and tax filing requirements depending on the kind of business you have. Now, those tax systems actually are related to what in Portugal is called the IRS, what is an equivalent to the income tax in other countries. That basically means that besides the IRS, you will also have another tax duties such as social security contributions. Social security contributions for employed people will be around 11%, but for self-employed, this may go up to 21%. So it's something to keep in mind depending on your situation. Now, talking about taxes, it's impossible to avoid the so famous NHR, Non-Habitual Resident Program. This is a tax incentive created by the Portuguese government years ago, but there's some things that you also need to consider. For example, the NHR is famous for providing a 20% flat rate on income tax. However, this rate may not be applicable to you if, for example, you don't qualify within a list of high-value activities professions. So that's something very important to keep in mind, and for you to talk to an accountant to see whether you can even apply to this regime. Moving on to the second point, bureaucracy. Probably you read that Portugal does not excel in this point. However, I've encountered some obstacles in my way, and I want to tell it to you so you can avoid them. For example, I had a super big issue related to just changing my address from my home place, which is Buenos Aires, Argentina, to Portugal. Basically, what happened was that the finances ministry would require me to provide either a registered lease or a title of a property or an employed contract with a local Portuguese company. If you don't have one of these three, you simply cannot change your address. So since I was working as self-employed when I moved to the country, it wasn't something really available for me, the same as buying a property. However, the third option that I had was to have my lease registered, but that also involved that I needed to talk to my landlady and to arrange different paperwork to get this done. another thing that happened for me was that it was really difficult to get SEF appointments, for example, for the family reunification. So if you're coming with your family and you cannot lodge them into your application, keep in mind that new SEF appointments come from time to time, so you need to be on the speed to call every week until securing your appointment. Third point that I want to raise with you guys is bank accounts, credit cards, and benefits. It's not very common here in Portugal that banks would offer a certain amount of benefits, miles, lounge access, as they would do in your home country. And that's something that actually shocked me. Even if you have a great bank account, if you have like one of the higher programs, it's really hard to get your hands on a credit card that will get you the same amount of benefits. There are few cards in a couple of banks in Portugal that now offer, for example, Priority Pass, but the Priority Pass won't grant you free access. You will still need to pay for lounge access, for example, on each visit. On the same level, there are a couple of banks that would offer miles with TAP or airlines, but they're not as generous as you may expect from your hometown. Now, home banking, which is another point related to this, it may vary a lot depending on the bank. I personally use Millennium BCP, not sponsored, and I'm really happy with their home banking. But I know that some other banks are not as good. Point number 4, cost of living. It's not a surprise to you that property prices in Portugal have gone through the roof, especially in major cities like Lisbon and Porto. However, it's also good to point that there's some things that maybe you don't expect to be as pricey. For example, groceries. In my experience, grocery prices have gone up significantly the last year due to inflation and different world situations. That said, I would think that grocery prices may be in line with US prices and even the same or slightly above UK prices. So this is something for you to consider depending on where you're moving from, because groceries in Portugal are not that cheap anymore. In terms of transportation, a public transport city pass here in Lisbon, for example, will cost you around 40 euros. And if you need to add lines such as a Cascais line because you live in Cascais or in Oeiras, that would add up to a 60 euro monthly pass, which is slightly more expensive than some other European counterparts. So it's one thing for you to consider in terms of budget. However, one good thing to point is that Ubers and Bolts are really affordable, especially if you're covering short distances. Now, onto the 5th point, the shyness of people. Coming from Latin America myself, it was quite surprising to see how shy and how reserved people may be. You will find that the Portuguese are super kind, generous, and they will go an extra mile to help you if needed. However, sometimes you will also find them to be quite reserved and shy. They have their own social circle of friends, so it's not that easy to blend in unless you join, for example, a sports club or a social event that would cater to them as well. So there you have it, guys. Those were the 5 things I wish I knew before moving to Portugal. I hope you find this helpful on your move to this wonderful country. If you like this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and make a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching and see you on the next video.